Mismatched libidos can be all kinds of things. They can be shifts in hormones as we age. They can be performance anxiety type issues that come up and cause somebody to have less desire than the other. Back to the shifting hormones, it can be the hormones itself, or it can be the things that hormones cause. Like, for instance, for women, we'll often see things like they have difficulty lubricating, they have painful sex, so that makes them less motivated to want to have sex. Then you've got things like resentments that build up over time, all those little things that just start piling up. And after 10 years, you're just so annoyed with your partner, you're not sexually attracted to them anymore, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things, and that's not even the full list of things. But when you realize that there are so many different things that can cause it, you can see why it's so pervasive.
Hey, I'm Jen, host of the Open Bedroom podcast, where you'll find topics of sex, dating, relationships, non-monogamy, and more. I'm glad you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Open Bedroom podcast. Today, I have on Kevin Anthony, a certified sexologist, Tantra Counselor, NLP Practitioner, and a sex, love, and relationship coach. For over 15 years, he has worked with men, women, and couples to have the relationships of their dreams and the best sex of their lives. He's also the host of the Love Lab podcast, creator of the popular YouTube channel Kevin Anthony Coaching, and creator of the popular online course Power and Mastery, as well as other online courses for both men and women. All right, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today. I thought we would just dive right in. And the first question that I have for you is, why are mismatched libidos so common in relationships?
This is a really great question. And the reason they're so common is just because there's a lot of reasons that cause mismatched libidos, right? So if it's just one reason, there'd be a subset of people that would experience that reason, and that would be that. But because there's so many different reasons for it, you tend to see it a lot. It becomes a very pervasive thing. So, mismatched libidos can be all kinds of things. They can be, shifts in hormones as we age. They can be performance anxiety type issues that come up and cause somebody to have less desire than the other. Back to the shifting hormones, it can be the hormones itself, or it can be the things that hormones cause. Like, for instance, for women, you will often see things like they have difficulty lubricating, they have painful sex, so that makes them less motivated to want to have sex. Then you've got things like resentments that build up over time, all those little things that just start piling up. And after 10 years, you're just so annoyed with your partner, you're not sexually attracted to them anymore, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things, and that's not even the full list of things. But when you realize that there are so many different things that can cause it, you can see why it's so pervasive. And we have to realize that we're two separate individuals, right? And we're all going through our own stuff. We're all having our own things shift and change, whether they're shifting emotionally or they're shifting physically, especially as we age. Think dynamics are changing in the relationship the longer we're together. And all of those things can create potential mismatches in libido. They don't have to, but they can, and they often do.
And it's so frustrating because when you first get that like zing with someone, you know what I'm talking about. You're like, it's like zingy, right? You're like, oh yeah, you're like both into each other, and all of a sudden like sex is so yummy and it's so easy, and it's like you both want it all the time. Like, at what point are you seeing with your clients where it's like it's that starts to separate, like that we're in sync in what we're desiring and craving and frequency, and then all of a sudden like it just kind of falls apart? Is that like NRE dissipates, or is it like the 7-year itch kind of thing that we hear about? What do you think?
Yes. So this is very common. And we have when we have this discussion, we have to separate out chemistry
Okay.
from actual attraction, right? So you mentioned NRE, we call it new relationship energy, right? It's a very common term in the poly space,
Yeah.
especially. But it's also referred to as chemistry. When you first meet somebody, you feel this intense chemistry with them, and you're like, oh my God, I'm just all about this person. I just want to have sex with them all the time. This is nature's way of pulling us together for the procreation of the species. It's a little trick that nature plays on us where it gives us all these feel good hormones and gets us all amped up on the other person because it wants us to come together. It wants us to procreate and perpetuate the species. However, nature also does something else, which is after a certain amount of time, it calms those down because, well, the deed's supposedly already done according to nature, right? So, and we call this the honeymoon period, right? And research, says anywhere from, a year and a half to 2 years ish is generally when that starts to subside. So one of the things that I often tell people, especially early on when they're dating and they're all about this person and they're like, oh my God, I'm like, okay, that's great. Just don't rush into anything big. You don't have to get married just yet. You don't have to move to another country. You don't have to have children yet. Just wait because you'll know whether or not this is the right relationship when that settles down. When the chemistry settles down and there's still attraction, there's still desire, you still want to be with this person, now you know you've really got something. So this is just nature. It does it on purpose, and we just need to be aware of it. Where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, is after that's gone. Can we maintain all of this afterwards? Right? That's where the true skill of relating comes in. Is can we still love this person, be attracted to them, maintain a healthy sex life, get along with them, live day to day with them when that chemistry is no longer making us all crazy in the brain?
And that's when I start to hear, we have a sexual mismatch. Like I hear that phrase thrown around a lot. And it's like, I know you're well trained with like the erotic blueprints from Ian and Jaya. And so I start to immediately start thinking, oh, one of you probably wants something different. Or if we go back to, libidos and frequency, and maybe someone wants something more frequently than another partner. And then that to me is when things get really crunchy. Like I'm curious when you have a client that's like, man, we were still in love and everything was great. And then you told us not to do anything crazy. So we didn't, but we did move in together. And then I swear to God, as soon as I unpacked my bags, everything changed and everything shifted. And, it felt calm. And now I don't get laid anymore. Like, what do you take them through at that point?
Well, there's two different things there. So the first one is the mismatch was always there. It was being overridden by the chemistry. So the
Oh,
chemistry was driving at that moment,
okay.
and you weren't able to see that the mismatch was there.
Mhm.
Now, the thing is you can like even if the chemistry's there and it's overriding the mismatch,
Mhm.
you can see that the mismatches are there really, really easily if you know what to do. And all you have to do is actually have conversations with your partner about sex, about what it is that you want, what it is that you like, what everything from the frequency of sex to the kind of sex to everything in between. And the problem is when the chemistry is flowing like that early on in the relationship, people don't have those
You're like, as
conversations.
often as you want, whatever you want to do, I'll do it.
So
Right?
there's
Too. Like
there's
there's a bit
there's
of that.
that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, still to this day, I mean, it's 2026, and to this day, the majority of people still have difficulty talking about sex.
God,
So they just don't talk about it. They don't have these conversations. I tell people all the time, I go, okay, look, maybe not on the first date. Maybe the first date isn't really the best place to talk about it. But if you've decided that they're worthy of more dates than that and you continue on with them, you need to start having questions like that because sex is such a fundamental piece of this relationship. And the research is really clear on this.
Mm.
When they do research on this and they look at couples, long-term successful couples, they all report having a sexually fulfilling and mutually sexually fulfilling relationship. So what the research says is, you know, if you want to have a successful long-term relationship, a healthy, mutually satisfying sexual relationship is a key component to that. Because if you have that, your chances of success long term are significantly higher,
Mm.
right? So we know that that's important. So then why, when you're dating, you're interviewing people, why aren't you not asking these questions? Why are you not figuring out whether or not this major area of your life and your relationship is actually compatible with this person? There's, of course, a lot of reasons for that. There's social stigma. People just aren't comfortable talking about uncomfortable topics. They don't know how to talk about it. They have tons of shame around sex, all of that stuff. And of course, the chemistry's going, it's overriding everything. So they just think don't really need to talk about it because it's working. Well, it's working now, but
Yeah.
is it going to continue to work? You don't know the answer to that until you're having those conversations. And so that's one of the reasons why it pops up later. Now, the second piece to that is you're like, well, we finally moved in and then all of a sudden everything changed. So you'll often hear men say this too. It's like, once we got married, then the sex just stopped, right? And they're like, what the F happened?
Yeah.
That's what they're thinking. And that really comes down to expectations. So what tends to happen is people are on their best behavior early on in a relationship because they want this person to stick around. So
Mm.
they will do things that they wouldn't necessarily normally do long term. But once you've decided, you've committed, now you're married or now you're moving in together, it's like, okay, whew, I got the man, I got the girl, whatever it is. Now I can be myself, right? And now the expectations I have about, this, that, or the other thing, now I can actually really, voice those. So like a common one is, you're dating and he goes out with the boys regularly, right? And then suddenly they get married and she's like, well, now that we're married, you're not going to hang out with the boys anymore. And he's like, wait, what? What? This was never, I never agreed to this, right? And it's because it was an unvoiced expectation. And the same thing happens with sex a lot of the time too. It's like, we're early on, the chemistry's flowing, and I want to make sure that I secure the person. Now I've secured the person, we're settled, we're, living together, we're married, whatever it is. And it's just like, okay, I don't have to fake wanting sex 3 times a week anymore.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, and this to me is the crossroads, right? Like you either end up in separate bedrooms, which I'm seeing a pretty big trend of in my friend group and outer friend groups. People that look on the outside like they're happily married, they're presenting that they're happily married to the world, but then behind closed doors, they're really not, and they're feeling isolated, and their needs aren't being met. Um, I'm sure there's some people that are really happy being married and living in separate bedrooms. I don't know. I don't do that with my husband. I'm the opposite. I'm like the koala. Like I want to koala him all night and touch him. Um, so I'd love for you to speak on that and your experience with, I guess, like is that a healthy dynamic, or is that something that you should really look at in your marriage? Is that maybe like a red flag that this isn't going to go really well long term? Um, and then I guess you know what else comes to mind too, or is there's this like hot trendy thing around being ace, or like not really wanting sex, or like not really pressuring your partner to have sex, like not asking for what you want because you're just like, oh, just, I don't want to ask for anything that might upset her, or like I'm seeing a lot of trend in that too, especially on social media. And so like how do you ask for what you need? How do you get your needs met without a feeling like a creep, to your partner? And then, B, I guess with it being received in the right way, and then maybe even like the flip partner when your husband or wife is saying like I really have sexual needs, like I want to be intimate with you. How do you soften and open to that in a way that is juicy for everybody? And again, I just keep going back in my mind to someone's needs aren't being met if they're not having good sex.
That is true.
Because
Okay.
if
So
you're
there's a
having
lot.
your brains fucked out all the time and you feel great about it, you want to keep doing that, right?
Well, that is very true.
All right, I'm going to hand you the
we,
baton and let you answer all that.
we could go in so many directions here. Okay.
Go for it.
You asked a lot. So I'm going to answer it. If I forget some of what you asked, just please remind me.
Okay.
Okay. The first thing is the trend of separate beds, right? Sleeping in separate beds.
What is that about?
I am not a big proponent of this. The only time where I am okay with this is when there are issues such as, maybe sleep apnea. You got to have a sleep apnea machine on all night, or, something like that, where it's literally preventing both of you from getting a good night's sleep. And then you're constantly cranky and tired and, bitching at each other all the time. In situations like that, this can be a good situation. However, if you're going to do that, then you have to make up for the closeness, the connection, the touch, the cuddling and stuff that you're missing before you fall asleep and when you wake up in the morning. You'll have to make up for that. You'll have to consciously put intention towards doing that in other times because you're going to miss out on it in those situations. Short of something like that, then I don't recommend it. In fact, I have something that I teach my clients all the time. I call it the constant state of arousal. And basically, what it is the little things that you do day in and day out to nurture the connection and the turn on in the relationship. And so, when I'm teaching people how to do this, it's lots of little things. It's about, hugging and kissing each other regularly throughout the day. I tell couples all the time, if you can, if your schedule allows it, shower together in the morning before work. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. I know it's not possible for everybody because we have different jobs and schedules and things like that, but do your best to align your schedules so that you get that connection time. Our schedules are so busy these days that we don't have that many opportunities to connect. So we got to find the places where we can. So I always tell people, go to bed at the same time. Why? Why is that important? Why do we say that? Well, because when you get into bed together, you have an opportunity, well, maybe to talk a little bit about your day, because maybe you haven't actually had a chance to sit down and connect with each other and say, how was your day? Right? Because you've been go, go, go all day long between work and the kids and all the stuff that has to happen around the house. And, maybe you spent time watching your favorite show instead of actually connecting with your partner like you should be. So you have an opportunity for that, but you also have an opportunity to just cuddle, like you said, koala bear, right? Just cuddle, touch each other. It doesn't have to turn into anything. It's not an expectation of sex. It's just connection, physical love, touch, and connection. And that's important. You get that before you go to bed, and then you wake up in the morning, you do the same thing. You spend, even if it's just 5 minutes, right? The alarm goes off. Just take 5 minutes, roll over and cuddle each other, touch each other, give each other a little kiss. That is how you maintain that connection. This is one of the key ways, by the way, that you don't end up as, roommates or, lack of libido or mismatched libido. It's doing these types of things. And so I don't really think it's a great idea to sleep in separate bedrooms unless you have a real issue. I have family members who started doing this recently, but the reason is he gets up at like 4:30 in the morning because he's got a long commute to work far away, and it disturbs her sleep. So they started doing this. They're both getting a better night's sleep. It's working for them because they're less irritable throughout the day.
Yeah.
But again, it's an extreme situation, and he doesn't have control, at least at this point, in his life, over shifting that schedule. So they're making do the best they can. But outside of extreme circumstances like that, I really don't think that that is a good idea.
Can we double tap on the constant state of arousal for just a second? Can I add something? And I'd love to hear your feedback on this. So my husband and I have been together for 4.5 years, and we haven't lost that zingy connection. I don't know what else to call it, just like a cord, like a cord with each other, right? And for those of you listening, if you're like, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about, you've lost it, but you can find it back. Like you can reconnect this cord. And what it is it's this kind of constant feeling of being connected to your partner, and not just like through your brain, but it's like through your heart, or it's through your genitals. It's this like, God, they fucking turned me on. And I think when you're in this constant state of arousal, it gets louder, like it gets stronger. And so I love what you said. You were like, go find your partner throughout the day and give him a hug and give him a kiss. And Scott and I will do this. And if I don't, he'll be like, why didn't you come find me today? And I'm like, because I'm really busy. But I have to remember that also his erotic blueprint, he's an energetic sensual. So he needs that connection and he needs that touch from me throughout the day if I want to have sex with him at night, because I'm a high sexual. And so we've learned to like keep that constant state of arousal. And I love that you said shower together. Like none of my friends shower together. And I'm like, what is that about? Well, I mean, I spent 2 decades and 2 different marriages, and no one was showering with anybody. But we very intentionally, when we bought this house, we had them do a custom shower. Had them do a custom shower for 3 people because we're typically in a throuple. And so I told my construction guy, I'm like, my contractor, I was like, not to be weird, but I need this to be big enough for 3 humans to be in here. And he was like,
Oh, I bet your contractor loved that.
he's like, okay, I got that. So we have like dual shower heads and like, enough space in the cubbies to put everyone's shampoo and conditioner. But there is something to it, even if you're not making out in the shower, like just being there together and like we're usually giggly and funny and I'll be like, let me wash the barnacles off you and like I'll wash him, and there's just like something so fucking yummy about it. Do you have practices like that throughout the day that help you stay connected?
Oh, absolutely. And the showering is one of them. Like when I wrote that list of things down to teach my clients, I
Mhm.
didn't get on the internet and research what the experts said. I said, what do I do in my relationships? What has worked for me? And I
Mhm.
just wrote that list, and showering was one of them. I never saw that anywhere. Like I never saw, sex experts out there saying you should shower with your partner. I just said, you know what? I've always done this with all of my partners, and it's always been amazing. It's another opportunity to connect with your partner. So when we're showering together, I do not have a shower big enough for 3 people, but it is big enough for 2 people.
Yeah.
But even with it being big enough for 2 people, we're not standing in separate corners, soaping ourselves, just doing our own thing. If we're going to be in the shower together, we're washing each other. That's the whole point. If I was just going to stand on the other side of the shower and just kind of do my own thing while you're in there, okay, great. I get to see you naked. That's kind of cool. I'm turned
Yeah,
on by
it's a
that.
lot.
But that's not really the point. The point is to be in there and do something together. And so it
Right.
is a very intimate thing to wash somebody. And
Mhm.
like you don't just, oh, here's a little soap. Okay, go rinse that. Like,
You're
you're
like,
soaping the whole body. You're getting into all the cracks and crevices. You're doing it in a way that's also sensual and
yeah.
fun. It's
Mhm.
not just like, okay, here we go. I'm scrubbing this here. Like you're not washing your car. You are spending some good connection time with your partner in a way that's fun and sexy.
Yeah, this is also really fun to do after morning sex. So we had sex this morning, and my husband will either go get like a really nice warm washcloth and he'll like clean up his mess, which I love. Like he'll clean me off and dry me off and be like, I love you. He does great aftercare. Or this morning, he's like, you're filthy. We need to go get in the shower. And I was like, okay. Even
Yeah.
better. Oh
Yes.
my gosh, how yummy. So if you're
But pe-
listening to this and you haven't showered together in a very long time or ever, I strongly recommend that you at least try it once and see how it goes.
Yeah, these are all the things you said you've been together for 4 years with your husband and you haven't lost that zing. This is why. It's
Mhm.
because you do these things on a regular basis. This is the constant state of arousal. This is when you walk by your partner, just passing by in the kitchen, you squeeze their butt if they like that, of
Yeah.
course. This is why you just walk by and you give them a hug or a kiss for no reason, right? This is why you do all of these little things day in and day out. You get in the shower together. My wife and I, when she was alive, we had a rule that if somebody was out of the house and then they came home, regardless of what you were doing, unless of course like we're in the middle of an interview or something like that, but regardless of what you're doing, you would stop and you would come and greet the person at the door. It's a simple little thing to just come over and say, "Hi, honey, glad you're home." Give them a hug, give them a kiss. That is how you keep that connection going over the long term.
Yeah. This isn't a super sexy side subject, but I also feel like whatever is most important to you in your life, you're supposed to make time for that. And so I
Yes.
think when you look at your calendar and you're so over calendared and you have something every single night of the week, whether it's kid stuff or your own personal stuff, and then all of a sudden you're like, why is my marriage not happy? Why are we living in separate rooms? Like, why does my
Mhm.
life suck so badly? Why does she hate me? Well, are you giving them time? Are you making them a priority? Are you going on date nights? Are you inviting them to travel? Like, I think another thing that keeps the zing, keeps that cord of connection is like putting your partner or your partners as priority. Wouldn't you
Yes.
agree? Yeah.
I had another guest on my podcast not too long ago, and he wrote a book called The Pause Button Marriage, and the whole conversation was about how couples tend to basically put their marriage on pause for different reasons. So, you said you have something scheduled every night of the week, and you got the kids stuff this, and you got to take them to soccer practice and gymnastics and music lessons and this and that, and like your whole life is consumed with doing other things. A lot of couples will consciously say, hey, you know what, right now we're just going to give all of our time and attention to the kids. We're not really going to focus on our relationship. We'll come back to it after they're taken care of and they're good, and they can do their own thing. Or people will do it for their careers as well. They'll say, you know what, right now my career is my number one priority, and they're going to put all their time in it. They're working 12, 14-hour days, they're working two jobs, or they're going to school to get another degree while they're working a job. Like, I'm not telling people they shouldn't do things. I'm not telling them that they shouldn't make their children a priority. I'm not telling them they shouldn't, invest in their careers or their educations. But what I'm saying is you have to also invest in your relationship. You can't put it on the back burner. You can't put it on pause, because if you do, one day you're going to wake up and realize we're roommates. I don't even know this person. I'm not attracted to them. We haven't had sex in 3 years. Like, what the F? Why am I even in this relationship? Right. And
Mhm.
you see this a lot with the couples who do that. Right. They wake up one day and realize they don't care about the person anymore. Like, all right, maybe not caring is a little strong, but they're just like, I'm not even attracted to this person anymore. Who is this person? Right. You
Mhm.
basically just end up as co-parents or, roommates. The other thing I want to say is you mentioned date nights.
Mhm.
And date nights are huge. It's something I've always taught. You have to have a date night. And by date night, so my wife and I, we created two rules for our date night. The two rules were, number one, we had to do something together. Now, people always laugh at that when I say that. They're like, well, of course, it's date night. You're doing something together. Yes. But by together, I mean we are focusing on each other. We're not just sitting there staring at a screen, watching a show. That's not focusing on each other. So, date night, we could watch a show any other night of the week. But on date night, what we are doing is focusing on each other. We're doing something where we're interacting with each other. It could be anything. It could be playing a board game. It doesn't really matter. We're doing something together where our attention is on each other. Rule number two is at some point during the date, we need to get naked. Now, that doesn't mean we have to have sex. There's no expectation of sex. It simply means that we need to get naked and touch each other. Now, why did we make that rule? What is the point of that? Well, because we knew that at the end of the day, a lot of times we would be exhausted. Neither of us would actually be in the mood for sex because we just had this crazy busy day. So if we didn't get naked, if we said, hey, it's date night, let's put on a movie and we'll just sit there, we'll watch a movie, we'll Netflix and chill, as the younger,
Yeah.
people say these days. We knew that if we did that, we would sit there, we would watch it, we'd fall asleep on the couch and then go to bed. But we knew that if we focused on each other,
Yeah.
and if we got naked, the chances of us actually connecting physically went way up, like significantly higher. I would say on date nights, 9 times out of 10, we would end up having some sort of physical sexual connection. Now, does that mean it's an hour of penetration lovemaking? No, sometimes yes, but not always. It may just mean we touch each other's genitals for a little while. May mean there's just a little bit of oral sex or something like that. But the fact that we were naked would be the thing that would get us to do, like, yeah, sit there with, if you're physically attracted to your partner, sit there with your partner naked for 10 minutes and tell me you don't want to have your hands all over them, right?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. What I love about this is I think it brings us back to that first thing we were talking about mismatched libidos or mismatched sexual desire. A lot of my couple friends are like, well, I want to do it late at night, and then she only wants to do it in the morning, or like the frequency thing. When you're putting the date night on the calendar, with the intention of we are going to get naked at some point. I love thinking about like spontaneous versus responsive desire. And for that, right? I'm like, you've got all fucking day to get your body ready if you know you're going to be fucking that night. You're going to be reading erotica. You're going to listen to your sexy music. You're going to take that shower and shave your legs. And I mean, this sounds way more like ladies, but whatever it is for you that helps you get there. I had a friend, her and her husband, she was actually the dom and he would sub. He was this like high-ranking, high-end guy, very important guy in his company. And he was like, come home and he'd be like, please fucking dominate me. So they would have these very intentional dates once or twice a month where she'd dom him, but she had that responsive desire. And so she would take the day and read erotica and get sexy, maybe masturbate, and then she'd take her shower and get ready and put on her outfit, that sexy dominatrix outfit where she was like totally plugged fucking in when it was time to like get the whips and chains out and tie him down. I thought that was pretty hot.
Yeah. So, I want to comment on that. And I want to just finish one last thing on the date nights. I thought date nights were so important that I recently created a coaching app. So I have this coaching app called Intimacy Mastery, and it's designed to help people learn everything that we're talking about today. But in that, I created a date night log and tracking component.
Huh.
So what it does is it reminds you that you have date night. And then the next day, it asks you to basically write or speak about how your date night went.
You like
Right.
rate it?
And then
Try
yeah,
to
and you
review?
rate it and then it tracks your progress. So you get to see this because,
That's
you
cool.
know, now we come back to the responsive, versus the spontaneous.
Yeah.
This is something that absolutely drives me crazy is I can't tell you how many times when I tell people you need to put a date night on the calendar, somebody says, yeah, but then it's like, I don't know, I want it to be spontaneous. And I'm just like, okay, so how's that working for you? You only want to have sex when it's spontaneous. How frequently are you actually having sex? Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I would like it 3 times a week. How often do you have? Well, maybe once a week, sometimes like once every 2 weeks. Exactly. Right. It's like, okay, yeah, everybody loves spontaneous sex. We see it in the movies and the shows all the time. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this spontaneous attraction and you just rip each other's clothes off and have sex. Okay, that's great. Let's be honest, it doesn't happen
Yeah.
very often.
It
And
doesn't
if you
happen.
are waiting for that to happen, you are not going to feel sexually fulfilled. And the chances that the timing for you're in the mood for that and he or she is in the mood for that and they actually line up at the same time, even less, right? Put it on the calendar.
But
If you want to make sure it happens, put it on the calendar.
you could overlay some super kinky shit though and be like, we're going to create a scene. And I am going to like ravish you in some crazy way that you're not even anticipating. Or we're going to go out on Saturday and we're going to go to the club. And at some point, I'm going to grab you and I'm going to drag you into that bathroom and I'm going to fuck your brains out against a wall. Like you could make fun, but you're like still, it's within the container of knowing, okay, cool. I need to buy fishnets. I need to shave. I need to get ready. Like I need to put lube in my pocket or whatever. Like I do think that there's a way to do both. I haven't quite cracked the code on that because my husband is the one that's like, it should just be spontaneous and it should be fun. And then to your point, occasionally he will find me after a conference call or a podcast recording and he'll be like, what are you doing? What's on your calendar next? And I'm like, nothing for about 2 hours. And he's like, come with me. That's really fun. But I do think like if it was me that was more like that, I would probably still calendar it and be like, don't forget to go grab husband at 4:30 before kids get home, you know?
Even if you put it on the calendar, that doesn't mean that you can't be spontaneous other times, right?
Yeah.
So you can make space for both. You can get it on the calendar. You have this weekly date night that you know you're going to be connecting at least in some way, although there's no expectation of sex. And then you can still be spontaneous any other time that you want. Furthermore, if you can make it like, let's say you have date night scheduled, you were saying you can combine the two, right? And I completely agree, where you can kind of think of something ahead of time and get all ready for it. He has no idea it's going to happen, and you can kind of spring it on him. spontaneously. It's spontaneous for him, might not be for you because you pre-planned it and thought about it, but you're still bringing in some of that spontaneity that he enjoys.
Oh, what I just thought about is like, what about the partner that rejects pretty easily? And then you're like, all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to be spontaneous because they say they want to be spontaneous. And then like you just keep getting met with rejection. Like, oh no, the timing isn't good. I have a conference call. The kids are coming. Like, I imagine that could also backfire on you without a good plan.
I mean, it could, but okay. So when you're feeling when you're experiencing rejection like that regularly, you have to ask some really sort of serious and honest questions. Like,
Hmm.
okay, let's say you decided to be spontaneous, and your husband walked in right now and was like, "I want to be spontaneous," and you're like, "I'm in the middle of a podcast." Like, okay, that's understandable,
Yeah.
right? But look at the different scenarios that are happening and then basically try to decide, are these really legit things? Am I really just bad on timing, or is there something else going on here?
Hmm.
My take is this: if you see this pattern happening regularly, where every time you try to be spontaneous, there's always something, some quote unquote legit reason why it's not going to work, it most likely has nothing to do with the reason that they're giving you. There's something deeper beneath the surface. They're not attracted, there's resentment, there's something going on, and they're finding excuses and reasons why the spontaneity isn't going to work in that moment. There's always going to be times where one person decides, they want to be spontaneous and there is a legit reason. So those will happen from time to time, in which case don't take it personally and realize your wife's in the middle of a podcast. This isn't great timing, right? Now, obviously, that's an extreme example, but there could be other less extreme examples. And that's fine. Don't take that personally. Don't, hold it against them or anything like that. But if you see that pattern happening over and over and over again, you have a deeper issue in your relationship and you need to talk about it. You need to sit down with your partner and you need to say, hey, can I talk to you about something that's important to me? There's a pattern that I believe that I've noticed, and I think it's important for, the health and longevity of our relationship that we talk about it. Is that something that you're open to? Yes. Okay. Can we schedule some time to set aside where we're undistracted by kids or life things, where we can sit down and talk about this? Great. Yes. You figure out when that is. You sit down and you say, I like to be spontaneous having sex. And I've noticed, like, the last like 5 or even 10 times I've tried to be spontaneous, there's always something, some reason why it doesn't work. I want to know, is there something else? Is there some other reason why you're not interested in connecting with me sexually? And if you have good communication, and if you're both able to talk about these difficult subjects from an emotionally mature perspective, then you can talk about these things. You can create a safe space for your partner to say, you're right. Here's what's going on. I've been really annoyed with you because of this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, when you do that, I don't feel safe in the relationship, or I build up resentment, and then I'm not attracted and I don't want to have that. Like, you can have those conversations and then you can figure out how to work through it.
Yeah, it's good. I kind of want to pull on this thread a little bit more, but ask an adjacent question. I have noticed as well in my friend groups, I feel like the men are pretty, like, it's pretty easy for wives to figure out how to get their men interested, right? Like, let's have sex. I feel like men are pretty uncomplicated. That's probably not very fair to generalize, but on the flip side, I feel like the husbands in my world are like, I have no idea what she really wants. Like, she seems to be really averse to wanting to have sex. And I know that there's something that I'm not doing that she likes, but I don't fucking know what it is. And I don't know how to ask for, like, how do you have that conversation? Or how do you delve more into, like, you're into this, but your wife's into that? And how do you understand and learn how to turn her on, how to get a yes from her?
Yeah, great question. The first thing is, so whenever I'm teaching communication to couples, the very first thing, so I have this little like communication master class that I put couples through. And the very first thing at the top of that masterclass is you have to create an atmosphere in your relationship where you can talk about anything, literally anything. You
Okay.
can come to your partner and say, there's something that is important to me that I want to talk about. And your partner will say yes. Not only will they say yes, but they will agree not to get reactive, not to get defensive, right? Not to take it personally, right? So the two of you have this agreement, this safe container in your relationship where you can sit down and talk about anything in a calm, emotionally mature way.
Mm.
Once you've got that, then you can talk about anything, literally anything. If you have needs that aren't being met, you can bring them to that container and you can talk about them. So, first thing is you have to have that container
Like,
established,
how
right?
do you establish that container to begin with, especially if you've been married forever and there's like patterns of hostility and there's all of this just years and years and years and years and years of growing and learning together and not doing it well. And so then you've kind of got this mishmash of bleh on the other side, and you're like, I don't know how to wade through this.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't had that container, it's best to establish that early on in the relationship. But if you haven't done that and you've got all these years of all this stuff built up, you're going to have to work through that stuff first. You're going to have to start to take it on. Probably you're going to need some help in that case. You're going to need a therapist. You're going to need a coach. You're going to need somebody like myself, right, who can work with you to get past all of that. Once you can heal all of that stuff, right? And establish a new level of trust and safety, which are two key components to this container that we're talking about. Once you can get back to that space, now you can create this container where you can talk about anything. But you're gonna have to work through all that resentment and built up junk that's happened over the years before you can really get there.
What's the difference in a therapist versus a coach in terms of experience? If a couple is looking for help, what would
Ooh.
make what would make them choose one over the other?
Okay, this is a great question. I'm so glad you asked this because I am a coach and not a therapist.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I've learned. I have interviewed on my podcast, I've interviewed about 150 guests over the years. A significant portion of them have been therapists of varying levels, whether they're licensed marriage and family therapists or full psychiatrists, and every other level of psychologist and therapist that you can think of in between. What I have learned from that is that when it comes to sex, the overwhelming majority of therapists, one, don't want to talk about it.
Yep.
They don't feel comfortable talking about it. And even if they do, they're not properly trained in it. They don't teach them this stuff when they go through school to learn about it. Or if they do, they get only like a little bit. I mean, like I said, I've interviewed tons of them, and all the people I've interviewed, I'm not saying anything bad about them. They came on my show because they had something valuable to offer.
Mhm.
But I've also learned that, like, you know, as somebody that doesn't have a degree or a license in psychology, like, there's a tendency somehow to think that they're above me or they know more than I do because they've gone through this official curriculum. And then I get talking with them one on one and I end up teaching them. I will tell you this, and I'm not saying this to brag, but I've had many clients in the past who were actual therapists. I have one right now who is an actual licensed therapist. They come to me to work on these issues because they don't have the training and the skills to do it themselves. So there are some really good therapists out there who are trained in this and specialize in this, but it's not every therapist. If you want to work with somebody who's a licensed therapist and you want to work on these more complicated issues that involve the sexual dynamic in your relationship, make sure you do your due diligence and find one that actually specializes in this and knows how to do it. Otherwise, if you're not hung up on having to work with somebody that has an official license from the government, then you can come and work with somebody like me. And I'll tell you, here's one of the advantages to working with somebody like myself. When you hold a license from a government organization, right, you are bound by certain rules. There are a lot of things they literally cannot tell you. Even in talk therapy, they cannot tell you, here's what would be good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because then if you went out and did that and something went wrong and you sued them, they would lose their license.
Mm-hmm.
As a coach, I'm not bound by those same rules. I can suggest things to you that your therapist could never, ever suggest to you. Now, they're not crazy things. They're not, you know, illegal things or anything like that. It doesn't have to be illegal to get somebody with a license in trouble, right? If somebody's working through some sexual issues and I suggest that they go see maybe a sexological body worker who does hands-on work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have seen people make fantastic progress with sexual trauma by working with somebody who does that kind of work. I don't do hands-on work like that, but I know people who do, and I have a couple people I really trust in that area. So I might recommend to a client that you work with somebody like that. Therapists can't tell you that, right? They can't recommend somebody to do that. And your by the way, your doctor's the same way. There's a ton of stuff out there that could really help you that your doctor legally cannot tell you. I went through a cancer journey with my wife, and I remember sitting there in the doctor's office, and the doctor was like giving me a wink and a nod and saying like, and then like passing me a piece of paper and saying, you should really go research this. And that was all he could say about it. And what was it? It wasn't anything crazy. It was literally all the most modern research on cancer treatments, but he wasn't legally allowed to tell us about that. Right now, those things are in the headlines and in the news, and everybody's talking about it. But back then, you couldn't literally say it, or you would lose your medical license. So that's how I make the distinction between a licensed therapist and somebody like myself. The licensed therapists don't often have the specific knowledge in this area, and they also are limited, bound by their license as to what they can tell you and what they can't tell you.
Yeah, I think that's that's a great response. Yeah, the other way I kind of look at it is like you're sitting on a couch being asked about your mother, like or you're sitting in front of someone going, "Are you ready to do the work?" Because we're
Yeah,
going to
well,
talk about it.
and here's the interesting thing, right? So this is another good point that you bring up, and I'm not faulting therapy
No,
for
no, no.
this because there's some value in this. The problem I have with that traditional talk therapy model is they'll spend the next 2 years talking about your mother, right? So for me, like when I'm working with clients, I will ask questions like that. I want to know what it was like growing up in their family. How did their family treat sex? Was it a shameful thing? Did they put guilt on you? Did they talk about it openly? Like, I want to know those things. I want to know, what your relationship to sex was as a child. What did you see and experience, or, that kind of stuff, because that does inform me on what kind of patterns are there beneath the surface. But once I understand what they are, I don't need to dwell in the past anymore and sit there for the next 2 years talking about your mommy issues. I go, okay, great. We found the pattern. We know where the trauma comes from, right?
Yeah,
We know the source of it.
let's go.
Now let's just work on removing it and moving forward. I don't need to dwell on that. And so, I don't fault therapy because I know that there's value in uncovering that stuff in the past. But what I think is that not always, but a lot of times they will spend just too much time, dealing with that and not really getting to how do we actually fix this problem and move forward.
Tell me about your podcast. You said you have over 400 episodes. What kind of stuff do you talk about?
Anything sex, love, and relationships. So it's called the Love Lab Podcast. I started it in 2018, I believe, if I recall correctly. I just recorded yesterday, episode 407. I think there are 403 officially published out in the world. I'm always a little ahead. And I cover everything that could possibly have anything to do with affecting your relationship and your sex life. I mean, I've had the inventors of Viagra on the show to, like I said, dozens of psychologists and psychiatrists. I've had people that have invented all kinds of sexual products. I've had urologists on. And then, of course, I do my own shows. They're not all interviews. So I will cover literally any topic. I just had a guy on who has nothing to do with sexuality at all. He's actually one of the foremost experts in the brain. and how the brain works. But we had a fantastic discussion about sexuality and what's going on in your brain when it comes to sex and arousal and libido and all that, and the actual neuroscience underneath that, right? So we have amazing conversations on the show. I cover a lot of deep topics. And the thing that I love about podcasting, and one of the reasons why I started a podcast, it's because it's one of the only places where you can actually talk openly and freely about these things. There are no constraints on what I can say. I can tell you exactly how it is. I can use whatever words I want to use. I can talk about clitorises and penises and all the things that get me banned everywhere else.
Yeah, thank God there's one place we can still be uncensored, at least for now, and that's really helpful.
Yep.
Kevin, this has been such a fun conversation, and you covered a bunch of ways that if people have fallen in love with you at this point, which I'm sure they have, because I know I have, you've got the app, which sounds really, really interesting. I love the idea too of like tracking and, kind of watching your date nights and seeing, oh, that worked really well or that didn't, or, like kind of, if you want to talk more about your app too, do you want to do that now? Like kind of give us a plug for what else is inside of it?
Sure. So the app is called Intimacy Mastery. You can find it on my website. So let me just say the best place to find everything that I do is on my website, which is at kevinanthonycoaching.com.
Okay.
Specifically, you'll find that the app on the homepage, but also if you go to kevinanthonycoaching.com/go/app, it'll take you straight to the app landing page. And in that, I have created an entire curriculum in there. So it steps you when you sign up for it, it asks you a bunch of questions and you input, what your relationship status is, what your goals are, what your challenges are, all this kind of stuff. And then it takes this curriculum that I've created and it uses AI technology to customize it to exactly what it is that you want to achieve or whatever your challenges are. And it builds you this whole 16-week curriculum and it steps you through. You can do daily practices or you can do weekly ones. And it just guides you through little by little. And it gives you lessons. It recommends content of mine. So it's trained on all of my YouTube videos and my podcast and a lot of my coaching material. And it draws from all of that. In addition to that, it also actually has an AI coach built into it that is trained on all of my content. So instead of going to ChatGPT and saying, my boyfriend said blah, 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 what's going on here? What does he mean? You can ask that question inside the app and you'll get a better answer because it's specifically trained on all of my content around sex, love, and relationships. So instead of a generic answer it pulls off the web, it
Mhm.
gives you a much better more comprehensive answer. So that's part of the app as well. I'm super excited about it. I think it's really cool. I was blown away when I finally saw the finished product after putting a lot of work into it. And I was like, this could help so many people. I'm just trying to get the word out on it. But aside from apps,
Yeah.
if if apps aren't the thing for you, which is totally possible, what I mainly do is coaching work. So again, at my website, kevinanthonycoaching.com, you can find my men's, women's, and couples coaching programs. So you can sign up for a free strategy call for me where we can talk about how I might be able to help you. I also have online courses. So I have a men's sexual mastery course, and there's actually three components to that. There's one called Power Up Your Erections for men who are experiencing erectile dysfunction. There's one called Master Your Ejaculation for men who are dealing with premature ejaculation or trying to master ejaculation control. And then there's Sexual Mastery, which takes you to all the other high level skills of what it really means to be a sexual master. I
Mm.
also have an online course for women called Blowjob Mastery, which I co-teach with a female coach who is basically teaching women how to give blowjobs that are so good that they blow his mind and he just looks at you like an amazing goddess. So I've got all of that. I've got blog articles. I've got my YouTube channel and videos. I've got all my podcasts. I've got products on there. This year I spent a ton of time creating a curated products page. Some of the products are mine from my online courses, and I have like some merch, some fun t-shirts and stuff like that. But then I went through, there are so many sex toys out there. It's like, which ones are the good ones and which ones are the crappy ones? Which are the good companies that'll stand by their product and which ones won't? I spent a ton of time sort of curating this to create a place where you could go where that you would get high quality products that will do what they say, that will last, that won't break, and that the company will stand behind. So all of that stuff is on my website.
I love it. You're not just like randomly going on Amazon buying $14.99 vibrators, hoping that they're going to work in 6 months.
No, absolutely not. And this, you can't see it on the floor behind me here. There's a pile of toys, because if somebody's going to be on that website, I'm like, send me some stuff. I want to see what this is like, and I want to try it and use it. Sometimes I do review videos, sometimes I don't. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend anything to anybody that I didn't think was a decent quality product.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, I'm going to put all these links below. Make sure that you're following on Instagram. Is that your favorite platform?
Yeah, Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. For some reason, my Facebook, which hasn't done much for me in many years, is suddenly starting to catch on and blow up. So that's great. You can follow me there. I'm on TikTok, YouTube. It's Kevin Anthony Coaching everywhere. So
Okay, fantastic. All right. All right, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did. Make sure that you go check out the app or contact Kevin if you need some coaching, or at least go listen to a podcast episode or two about something that you're really interested in.
Thank you for listening to the Open Bedroom Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and give us a like and click subscribe below, and stay up to date on all the new episodes that we release. If you have a topic that you'd really like more information on, leave us a comment below and we'll see what we can do. Feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends, and especially your partners. This is a great way to open up some amazing conversations. We'll see you next week.